Everyone, we're going to call tonight's meeting to order. We're going to start with an approval of the agenda. The recommendation is that the agenda and the addendums for today's council meeting be approved. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor McIntosh and Councillor Sherwood, all in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have a recommendation that a closed meeting of council be held pursuant to Section 239, subsection 2 of the Municipal Act for the purposes of considering the following matters. 2 items of closed council minutes from the 5th and 6th of June, a confidential report from Castles Brock and Blackwell LLP regarding town building, a confidential report from Orangeville Hydro Limited regarding election of board members, and a confidential verbal report from Karen Landry, Acting General Manager, Corporate Services, regarding public office holders. Can I have a motion to go into closed? Councillor Andrews and Councillor Prendergast, all in favor? Carried unanimously. We are now in closed session. Welcome to the open portion of tonight's council meeting. We're going to begin with the singing of our national anthem. If everyone who's able could please stand.
O Canada, a home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We would like to acknowledge the treaty lands and territory of the Williams Treaty Nations and of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We also recognize that Dufferin County is the traditional territory of the Wendat and the Haudenosaunee and is home to many Indigenous people today. Tonight's meeting is being aired on public television and or streamed live and may be taped for later public broadcast or webcast. Your name is part of the public record and will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Any member of the public who's connecting via telephone is reminded to press *6 to mute and unmute. Please remain muted until the chair requests comments or questions from the public. Before tonight's open session, we did have a closed. Good. We did have a closed meeting of council. And the Risen report is the recommendation that the 2023 June 5th and June 6th closed council minutes be approved, and that the confidential report, Castles, Brock and Blackwell LLP Town Building regarding litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, be received. And that confidential report CAO 2023-7, Orangeville Hydro Limited, election of officers be received, and that council nominate Gia DeJulio and Mary Caputi to continue to serve on Orangeville Hydro Limited Board of Directors for a 3-year term, and that council direct a proxy vote in favor of the approved nominees on behalf of the Corporation of the Town of Orangeville at the shareholders meeting to be held to appoint the members to the Orangeville Hydro Limited Board of Directors. And that confidential verbal report from Karen Landry, Acting General Manager, Corporate Services, Public Office Holders regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, be received, and that staff proceed as directed. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Stevens. Any questions or comments? I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that is carried unanimously. The next item is the previous council meeting minutes. The recommendation is that the minutes of the following meetings be approved. The council minutes from June 5th and the special council minutes from June 6th be approved. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor McIntosh and Councillor Sherwood, any questions or comments on the minutes? I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. I get to start tonight out in a really great way, and I'm going to invite Heather Sheehan up to the delegation podium, please. Heather, if you want to head up there. Right there, yeah. And you can have a seat there if you'd like. Earlier this week, Heather was presented at, I guess it was on Friday, so late last week, we had the honor of gathering to recognize Heather, who's been selected as the Ontario Senior of the Year in the town of Orangeville. And I just wanted to tell the community a little about Heather and the stuff that she's done in our community and why it makes her the perfect candidate for Ontario Senior of the Year. I'm absolutely honored to be here to honor an exceptional individual who's made an indelible impact on our community. It's with absolute great pleasure that we celebrate Heather Sheehan as the recipient of the prestigious Ontario Senior of the Year Award for 2023. Heather's dedication to creating an inclusive community is truly commendable. Through her tireless efforts and selfless commitment, she has enriched the social, cultural, and civic life of Orangeville, leaving a lasting legacy for generations to come. As an active volunteer, Heather has generously donated her time to numerous local nonprofits, groups, and events. Her involvement with organizations such as the Orangeville Food Bank, Choices Shelters, Celebrate Your Awesome, and Headwaters Healthcare Center's Telecheck program has made a significant difference in the lives of many individuals in need across our community. Heather's unwavering support and advocacy for inclusion and diversity have been instrumental in better meeting the needs of our community members who are struggling. Not only does Heather exemplify compassion and kindness through her philanthropic endeavors, but she also extends her enthusiasm to the local arts and culture scene. She's been a steadfast supporter of local artists, showcasing their talents through art shows and events. Heather's unwavering commitment to the Dufferin County Museum and Archives, the Dufferin Arts Council, and Theatre Orangeville has fostered a vibrant cultural landscape within our community. Today, as we gather to honor Heather, let us recognize the significance of her contributions, her unwavering dedication to improving the lives of others, and her passionate pursuit of a more inclusive community embody the spirit of this prestigious award. On behalf of Orangeville Council and our entire community, I extend my heartfelt congratulations to Heather Sheehan. We're truly fortunate to have her as a valuable asset, inspiring us all to make a difference in the lives of those around us. In conclusion, I encourage each and every one of us to follow in Heather's footsteps, to reach out and support those in need, and to contribute to the betterment of our community. The world needs more Heathers. With that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Heather, who I believe is going to be willing to make a couple of remarks for us. And your mic is on, Heather.
I really just to thank you for choosing me to represent one of many of the seniors who give generously of their time and their talents and their resources. But I also want to challenge you here as a council, and those of you members of the council who sit on the Dufferin County Council, to think about this. Family transition place, think of it. Think of the men's shelter. Let's make the men's shelter really work. Let's work with everybody who's interested in it, work together and make it happen. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather. Would anybody on council like to make any comments before we move on to the next section? Or did I cover it good? We're good? Wonderful. Thank you so much, Heather, and your family who's all here today to celebrate. I don't have the official award to present, Heather, because we already did that on Friday. So I hope it's hanging somewhere lovely in your home, Heather. Thank you for being here tonight as well. Next up, I have Susan Sherman from 106 Benjamin Crescent, who's going to come up to the delegation counter and talk about traffic congestion. Susan, are you here? Perfect. Wonderful. If you just want to have a seat there, we'll make sure that your mic gets turned on. Is it on? Yeah. So if you just want to pull the mic up so it's close to you, and then you can go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you for this opportunity to be here tonight to talk about the increased traffic congestion in and around Orangeville, its impact on our community, and possible solutions. I have concerns regarding the increased traffic. It is changing the nature of our town, its charm and historical ambience that so many people have worked hard on to preserve and grow is slowly being eroded with the speed, noise of too many cars, and I think it's reasonable to predict that this will only increase with further urban density. A key observation that perhaps many of you have also experienced is that stop and go movement when you're driving and how much it's increased. It's occurring between the increased number of stoplights, and predict that with further growth of stoplights, traffic jams will continue to worsen. Do we really want a blueprint copy of how other municipalities have grown? Do you like it? Is this what many people, families have moved here for? A suggestion is that better transportation design might increase road safety by improving intersection safety. A roundabout might be a partial solution. Currently, we don't have any. I haven't seen any. None. Instead of stop and go with emissions by waiting, a positive aspect would be to increase the flow, the traffic flow that might ease some driving stress, and perhaps there are juncture points before driving into our town that could be addressed prior to entering it to prevent congestion from occurring. I want to see some ambitious outlier thinking here and action on this from our council, because growth is occurring so quickly now. The roads are increasingly hectic, drivers are increasingly aggressive, and it is also becoming increasingly dangerous on Orangeville roads, and suggests that perhaps by creating flow instead of that stop and go that many of you might experience now that when you're driving is dangerous. And also, if you can ease the driver's stress, people might move on to their destination by creating moderate speeds through better urban design. These roundabouts could be greened up, so to speak, to create beautiful and lovely points that serve to enhance. Also, beautifying it might have other subtle consequences that could modify driver behavior. These roundabouts could replace some existing intersections with architecturally attractive features that blend in with the town's history, using nature that could enhance prospects for tourism by aesthetically improving the appearance of our town. These roundabouts could be greened up, so to speak, to create beautiful and lovely points that serve to enhance the community's appearance and tie in better with the theme by lessening segregated design. Think of the downtown water feature. Think of the lovely carved wooden statues that we have. These might be nice features. There's lots of possibilities. Please reflect on your next driving experience in your community, how much it is sadly impacting our town, and what if we ambitiously redesign the roads for a safer, more pleasant experience. This is in itself a journey that needs to be embarked on with some urgency for the long term before conditions worsen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sherman. I'm going to ask that you hang on there because I see I've already got questions from council. I just wanted to start off by saying I appreciate you being here tonight, and you bring up some great points and some that I know our council has considered in the past. We've looked at the options of roundabouts for some of the new intersections, and I know there was some discussion in the county as well about the potential of adding some. So it's definitely something we're considering and thinking about. I will turn it over to Councillor McIntosh first and then Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you for your comments. One of the things that was done in the previous council was to synchronize the lights on Broadway. It certainly keeps Broadway moving, I've noticed anyway, quite a bit better than it was before. So that's one of the initiatives that, you know, this previous council has done. As far as roundabouts, if they ever come to council, I personally will fully support them. I think they're great. They're great for the environment because you're not stopping and starting and carrying on. So it keeps traffic flowing, as you say. So I would support roundabouts when and if they do come. Thank you for your time, though.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I love your comments. Thank you for being here and saying them. You were preaching to the choir. I wrote down some messages here that you brought on. So speed is the number one thing that this council hears about, right? People are definitely disrespecting rules of the road as we go. We have done initiatives. The 40-kilometer-an-hour zone was the majority of us on this council. Enforcement's done by the OPP. There's a device called Black Cat that's out there tracing speeds, trying to find out where the speeding people are, and then the OPP will come and enforce that area as we go. But there's lots of work to be done, and the truth is the only way to have it done is enforcement, and enforcement is expensive. So we're trying to be smart with our money as we go about doing that. Anyway, huge opportunity there that you bring forward. Noise is another one. Noise has been something that I've been pounding the table on for quite a few years here. We're working on the noise bylaw, changing it, updating it. The OPP are very aware. The OPP have run programs to target noise in our town. The Police Services Board, which will be meeting here in this room next week, help me out, this week, thank you. That's why she's the mayor and I'm not. It's this Wednesday at 5 o'clock. And noise is on the agenda, and we're talking to the OPP about that. So you could come here and speak to the OPP through the Police Services Board, of which the mayor and I are on that. The other piece, Councillor McIntosh brought up roundabouts. I've been pounding the table on roundabouts for years. 2 locations where we should have them right away, and I could come up with a third one very quickly, but I call it Town Line and Town Line. It's over by Wimpy's, that section there. The difficulty is it's not an Orangeville Council decision. It's not a Town of Orangeville decision. That's actually Peel. It looks like it's part of our municipality. It's a light that sits there and turns red and green for absolutely no reason whatsoever. We should have a roundabout just to move the traffic through there. The county has been on it, but at this point, unless Peel wants to come to the table, we can't do anything about it other than continue to advocate. The other one is at the County Road 23 and Broadway. They are looking at changing that roadway there, but that road, it's a strange road. If you can think about it, you come out of the Settlers Creek area and you kind of go down and around. It should be a roundabout for sure in my mind, and been pushing that. We'll see how that discussion goes. A fourth one is over by Home Depot. There's that large field there. In my mind, that's perfect for an in-town roundabout. So absolutely agree with you. We're behind the times. I go into Cambridge, Kitchener quite a bit, and it's roundabout capital of Canada in my mind, and they're beautiful, to your point. So I think everything that you said makes perfect sense. And the last question or last statement I'd say is it's so interesting to me that someone who lives on Benjamin is coming to council talking about traffic things, and you didn't mention your own street. So I've heard from more people who live on your street about issues on your street, and at some point we'll fix the bend at the back end of the street. But you know, we'll get there at some point. But it's difficult. I think the parking one side of the street's going to help, but there's still lots of things to do on your street in particular. And anyway, I just thank you for your comments. I think more people like you should come to council and advocate, and more people should be doing things that are positive, not just sitting at home talking on social media about what you can do, but truly advocating and coming and trying to do things. Like, we're just one voice. If public gets behind it too, it'll really help. So thank you so much for being here, and please come to the Police Services Board meeting this Wednesday.
Thank you.
5 o'clock.
Councillor Sherwood, go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship. Actually, Deputy Mayor Taylor just took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you, Ms. Sherman, for coming and giving your delegation. I wholeheartedly believe in everything you say. I'm a very huge supporter of roundabouts. We, the previous council, have had many discussions on areas that we would like to see that implemented. Sometimes it was the land just didn't allow that opportunity, but going forward, know that, you know, I'm very supportive of that when future developments come where, you know, in lieu of traffic lights, we really want to consider roundabouts. So again, I was just going to say exactly what the Deputy Mayor said about going to the Police Services Board as well. And you have 2 individuals here that will very much advocate at the county level. Our mayor and our deputy mayor will very much take these kind of comments back to the county level. So it's not just an Orangeville related, but all of Dufferin County. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And finally, before you leave, Ms. Sherman, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Koslak, who's our General Manager of Infrastructure Services. So he takes care of all things roads. So I'll let him have some comment as well. Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I've always been a fan of roundabouts. I put some in my former lives and found they worked out quite well. I think one of the good options with them is it's excellent when you enter into a town or a change in scenery. If you're coming off, say, a county road or a highway into a municipality, it really alerts that there's a different area, and it really helps set that up. I know the county was looking at that with the realignment on County Road 109 and the second line of Amaranth to look at a roundabout. It didn't sound like it was feasible with the work they were doing, but it is one of the important things to look at as part of it. And I think it's one of the things more and more we'll look at through development applications to see if it is an option to do it as part of that work.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much again for being here. We appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move into the staff report section now. We're going to start with 12.1, which is the report regarding the Mill Street Library, Rotary Park, and Alder Pool renovation and funding status. It's report CMS-2023-19. Before I turn it over for a vote, maybe I'll turn it over to Ms. Savage to make any comments about the report that you wanted to highlight.
Thank you, Mayor Post. So this report is in response to a report that I had brought forward in April. Deputy Mayor Taylor had asked, it was about the fire hall and what should we do when it comes to non-net zero versus net zero. So Deputy Mayor Taylor had said, I think we need to make more of an informed decision. So could you please bring back all the capital projects and community services and give us a status update? So absolutely, this report addresses 3 of our major capital projects, the Mill Street Library, the Alder Pool, and the Rotary Park redevelopment. As you can see from the report, Mill Street Library is tracking to be on budget and on time, open in September. And the Rotary Park, what we've done there is we're moving forward with an RFP, trying to hire an architect to go and design the different phases of the Rotary Park, putting a price tag to each of those phases, and then determining, all right, we have a certain amount of money that's in the budget, but how much do we have and how many phases are we going to go through? So we will return to council once we have those results. And then, of course, the infamous Alder Pool. We've had some challenges there, and staff are returning to council requesting further funding. These are structural issues that require funds to remediate the work, specifically some soil work underneath the concrete, some concrete work. But we are confident that once we move forward, if council approves today and we move forward, we will have one of the prized possessions of the town of Orangeville. This pool is already making tracks across the country. We've had a lot of visitors. It will be something very exciting that Orangeville can be proud of.
Thank you very much, Ms. Savage. I'm going to go to Councillor McIntosh, then Deputy Mayor, then Councillor Sherwood, then Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Worship. I'll be honest with you, I would love to vote against this. Another $3 million, it's terrible. And I'm not blaming any staff. I know we've had issues with the construction of the building and various other issues that we won't get into here, but it's no fault of staff that we need this money. I don't like it. I think it's ridiculous. I will support it because we've already got $6 million into this. And, you know, that's an expensive pile of dirt if we don't do something with it. So I will be supporting it. I don't want to support it, but I don't feel that this council has any choice but to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McIntosh. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just feel if something's so controversial that we should all weigh in and offer our thoughts on this as we go through. And I imagine most of council would feel the same. But this building was just over 20 million to build originally, and now we're going to put in almost 50% of that. We're up to $9 million. If the public who's watching this or whomever reports on this thinks that we're all drinking up here, we're not. We're not making silly decisions. We're doing what we need to do to have an asset continue on and move forward. We cannot stop and leave the asset the way it is. There's no choice but to go forward. But it's really upsetting, and this is one of the worst things I've been involved in on council since we've been doing it. But I just want to justify why I'm going to be voting in favor with you, Councillor McIntosh. And I don't know. I think staff has done a great job under exceptional circumstances.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Ms. Savage. First of all, I want to thank you very much for the report. I like the way how you gave us the good news, then the next news, and then to the bad news. Really like that strategy. I do want to tell you that I am really excited to read about the library and that it's on budget. Kudos to staff for that. The Rotary Park redevelopment, the water main work, I assume, is progressing right now, as well as the structure. No. Okay. All right, but that's coming. Oh, sorry. Did you want to answer me about that?
For you, Mayor Post, Councillor Sherwood. Yes, so we're waiting to tender the project. We're in the midst of tendering the project, hiring the architect and the engineer. And once they're on board, they will go and do all the design work. The water main work will begin in April of 2024.
I'm looking at infrastructure and they're like, yes.
Mr. Koslak's
I love it
nodding.
when
We're
I-
good.
I love it when I see 3 nodding heads there.
That's right.
Perfect. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for all being in sync. And lastly, of course, we got to, I'm going to address the elephant in the room, and that's the pool. And let everybody know that anyone that's watching or reporting, as our deputy mayor said, do we want to spend another $3 million? Absolutely not. But we have an obligation to. We need to give our citizens a top-notch, safe facility. And, unfortunately, things happen when when construction starts. We all probably have seen it in our own private lives where you start a project and then all of a sudden you uncover other things. So I don't think we can put a hard stop on this now. We have another pool that who knows how long it'll hang in. So we do need this. And I think once we get through all of this, we're going to have a state-of-the-art pool that we're going to be so proud of.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Councillor Andrews, and then Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, Ms. Savage, I want to thank you again for the detailed report. Myself and my fellow colleagues sitting next to me sit on the library board, and I'm so happy to see that we are on time and on budget. The elephant in the room. I don't like seeing us having to spend the additional money, but we know the situation we're in. The situation is that we've uncovered things. We have to move forward. We're so far into this that we have no choice. We are going to have a state-of-the-art facility that will end up benefiting our community for years to come. And, if some people say, well, the state-of-the-art facility, this has been designed so that we will not have any future problems. A stainless steel bowl is going to enable this pool to be used for decades to come by so many people in our community. I think the most important thing is that much time has been spent on reviewing this situation. And again, I commend you and your staff for the due diligence that you have provided and information that you've provided to council. We're heading in a good direction. It is a very difficult pill to swallow, but it's one that we must to move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Mayor Post, through you. Like my colleague to my right, I am very thrilled that the library is going to be completed on time. There are a couple surprises there for residents when it does open, and we look forward to a big opening. I also am excited about the new park facility at Rotary Park, and that one of our wonderful service groups the Rotary Club is going to be giving $250,000 for this project. That's what we love to see. And again, Alder, we need the pool open. We need to pay what we need to pay to have that project completed. And at this point, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. We have to pony up the dough. So I will be voting in favor of that. I was just wondering, Mrs. Savage, if when we approve this additional cost, is it premature to talk about a timeline for the completion of the pool, or maybe that's wishful thinking?
Ms. Savage.
Through you, Mayor Post. We had originally said that it would be open in September. At this point, we don't know. The work at the pool right now has stopped. We need approval from council today in order to continue. You'll notice that it's a bit quiet over there over the last couple of weeks, and that's because we need to be able to fund all of the remediation work that we're about to either take on or we've already done just to keep the engine going. So we will assess the timelines because of that and report back.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Your Worship. I echo everybody's. None of us wants to spend the money, but we don't seem to have a choice. I do have a question more on the budget. We allocated $1 million for Rotary Park, and we're not starting that right away. So what happens to that money, and can we use it towards this?
Ms. Savage.
Thank you, Mayor Post. So there's $1 million for Rotary Park. The way that it's structured is that $1 million is going to go towards the design of the phases. And that architect, engineer, all of the subject matter experts that are going to be hired after our tendering phase will they're going to lay out what that park's going to look like. They're going to take those the conceptual designs that were done before. They're going to do proper detailed designs. They're going to assess the cost of each of it, and they will be pursuing phase 1, which is the water main, phase 2, which is the playground and the playground structure. So a portion of that $1 million will go to prep the playground. And then we will figure out how much do the phases 2 through 6 cost. we have $1 million and we'll figure out which phase can we achieve within that $1 million and which needs to be delayed to further years or to a further budget cycle.
Does that answer? You're good. And I'll just make my final comments before I go to the recommendation that's in the report. And that would be, oh, Councillor Sherwood, you've got something as well. I just wanted to, to the community out there, I know that there's been a lot of frustration about the pool and there's been comments about it taking too long and maybe we haven't hired the right contractor and, what are we doing about legal and are we suing anybody? And we've heard lots of comments and I just want to let the community know we have an exceptional contractor working on this project and the scope of this project from the time that it started until today has changed significantly. What started as a pool liner replacement has turned into much more than that, including finding structural issues, finding a lot of other issues within the structural body of the pool. And what started as a pool liner replacement has turned into a complete gut and rebuild. So the contractor didn't sign up for that when he took on the pool liner replacement, but he stayed, he's worked diligently, he's worked extremely hard. And I've heard comments about, are we pursuing legal action? And I just want, again, to the community, I want them to know that at this point, all of our efforts are put on finishing the project, making sure that it opens safely, that it opens as soon as it possibly can, because we're all anxious for it. And that in the background, staff is looking at all of our options and will present council with options when the time is right. And council will then move forward with whatever is recommended based on legal opinion. So we are looking at all options and moving forward. I as well will be supporting this because we can't stop at this point. We're too far into this project. And quite frankly, I'm really glad that we went to replace the pool liner when we did, because we found some other deficiencies that I think it's a real benefit to us that we have moved this far. We're going to have the right pool in the right place and it's going to be safe and the community is going to be able to enjoy it. So those were my kind of brief comments about that. Councillor Sherwood, I will turn it over to you.
Yes, Your Worship. Just to go back, Ms. Savage, to the Rotary Park redevelopment and the water main work. I'm sorry, I didn't look up the project number, but I believe the 325,700 would be coming out of Waterworks reserves and not out of that $1 million.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so the recommendation in the agenda is that report CMS 2023-19 Mill Street Library, Rotary Park and Alder Pool update be received and that council approve the Alder Street change order requests as outlined in the report and that council approve additional funds of $3,028,000 from the General Capital Reserve Fund to fund the change orders of Alder Pool, and that council approve $300,000 from General Capital Reserve Fund to fund the structural analysis of the entire Alder Street Recreation Centre. Can I have a mover, please? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Andrews. Any last comments before I call the vote? Okay, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Item 12.2 is the temporary relocation of off-leash dog park. It's report CMS-2023-22. I will start with comments again because I think there's going to be comments and questions before I go to the recommendation. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I read this report with a lot of interest and being as candid as I can, I don't own a dog, but I have dropped by numerous times because it is in my neighborhood. And there are a lot of people that surprisingly I've spoken to who don't realize that this is actually the town of Orangeville's dog park, but it is actually temporary because of where it's located. So that's to be clear to the general public who may be watching. Is there a communications plan as part of this relocation to the members of the public who just assume that this is going to be there for a period of time? And I'll use just an example through Councillor Pendergrass and myself, through suggestions we made on the library board with some of the renovations that have taken place. Some posters were put up with QR codes with an opportunity for explanation, because you can't have a staff member who's going to be there telling people, and sometimes misinformation in this wonderful world of ours gets out there. So that is really the question I have, and I'm assuming it is going to Ms. Savage. So is there a communications plan for this relocation?
Through you,
Ms. Savage.
Through you, Mayor Post. Councillor Andrews, great timing. So my department and I, we meet with Karen's department, communications, every month, and we talk about what's happening this month, what's happening next month, and we build out that communication plan together talked about the dog park, had a few ideas. We'll take back the idea of a QR code and regular updates on the other end, but just so that people are aware that it will be temporarily relocating to over by the train station. And then as we return to council and suggest permanent locations for a dog park, because we know that that is a necessity within the town, and that the Parks and Rec Master Plan also suggests that. When we find a permanent location, we'll return to council and we'll have regular updates through communications.
Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I do have a dog, Carter and I, who's named after Joe Carter, the greatest Blue Jay ever. He and I go to the dog park frequently. And Carter and I were chatting, and he's concerned that the new location at 49 Town Line, is the ground good over there? I mean, it's right by what used to be an industrial area. Is there going to be any issues for our pets? Is it safe? That sort of thing. I'm sure you're going to say yes, but that's what I'm being asked by the public.
Ms. Savage.
Through you, Mayor Post, I'm going to say I don't know at this time, but, and I will turn it over to Tim, we are doing an environmental assessment. We are on stage 2 of that environmental assessment. So as we move forward with whatever's happening there, maybe you could speak a little bit further to it.
I do also have an amended motion that I will read when we get past that, because I asked the same question. So Mr. Koslak, over to you.
Through your worship, there has been contamination found on the property previously. There was a study in about 2020 that year 2000 that found some contamination from previous uses. So this summer we're doing additional monitoring of the area. There were 6 of the old monitoring wells that we were able to reuse and rehab, and then we've installed new monitoring wells and taken core samples. So we expect to get the results in the next month or 2. Then they'll have the soil contamination, they'll have any groundwater contamination. And we've asked the consultant also to be able to comment on potential uses, something like the dog park, whether it be an issue. So we'll have more information in a month or 2 that we can bring forward to council at that time.
And just so everybody knows, I will turn over to Councillor Sherwood in a second, but that was the same question that I had asked earlier. So the motion that's currently in the agenda, I just had it, we adjusted it a little bit to say that that report be received and that council approve the temporary relocation of the dog park from Hanson to 49 Town Line with the funding request of $25,000, and further that staff be directed to return to council for direction if it is determined through the environmental study process that remediation of the proposed new site would be required. So that will cover off that environmental component, and it would have staff come back to report if that's not a feasible location. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. I'm probably going to be the bad guy here. I'm just wondering. First of all, I'm in full support of the off-leash dog park. I've taken my dog there, and it's great. It's needed. However, here we are asking for more money out of our precious reserves. When I wonder, since the timeline here is to not do this to 2024, how come this cannot be brought? I would like it to be brought in the 2024 budget. And the only reason I will not support it is because you're asking for it to come out of reserves now, when I look at the project as being a 2024 initiative.
Ms. Savage, do you want to make comment on that?
Sure, thank you. Through you, Mayor Post. We can bring it back through the, we could propose it as a capital cost for the 2024 budget. It's still going to come out of the reserves at that time as well. So right now it would be a pre-approved amount for 2024. We can bring it back so that maybe you could see it in the bigger picture, if that would be helpful, the bigger picture of other capital requests and the operating budget.
Do you have follow-up, Councillor Sherwood? Okay, so we will go to the next question while you continue to brew. Councillor Stevens, go ahead.
Through your worship, I also have dogs, and I'll leave it at that. But I've been fighting for a permanent spot. Obviously, we're going to keep working on that. I read that in the report. I'm wondering if we can just, I'd like to bring this back once we get all the information. I echo Debbie's comments. I'm just worried about the money this year. We're spending a lot of money, that's all. No question, just a comment.
Ms. Savage, do you want to make comment on that? No, you're good. Councillor Prendergast, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Post. I just had a question in relation to the Parks, the Recreation and Parks Master Plan from 2020, which suggested we have a second permanent dog park. Would it maybe be worthwhile to entertain purchasing the Orangeville Hydro open field, opening that up as the second permanent park, and then relying on the, I'm just reminding myself of the previous development's name. Over by the mall, Orangeville Highlands would be the first location. So this could be the second permanent location. I don't know if it's a better location, but perhaps it's premature to dismiss that because we need to enter into an agreement. Perhaps someone on staff could speak to that.
Ms. Savage?
Through you, Mayor Post. We know that staff have mulled over the idea. We are going to need a land acquisition strategy. Time frame, I'm not sure, but one of the reoccurring themes is that there's not enough land here, or there's, and so I think as a whole, we need to look at what's available within the town of Orangeville, what may come up for sale, what would benefit our 5, 10-year, 20-year land needs, everything from sport fields, dog parks, to indoor infrastructure. Something like that, I think, should be rolled up into a land acquisition strategy. However, I don't know if the timeline would fit, but noted.
Prendergast, do you have additional?
Thank you, Ms. Savage. The only reason I bring it up is because it was a recommendation as a site for a second park. Thank you.
Perhaps my question is more for planning, and it would be, do we have an idea yet of when that development behind the Orangeville Mall is slated to start construction? I know, summer 24?
Thank you, Your Worship. The short answer is you're right. It's more of a planning matter, but I can speak to it as it relates to our development reviews. And I can tell you that we're currently working with the applicant, who is Orangeville Highlands, as Councillor Pendergrass said, and that we are looking at it. We are currently, as I recall, between first and second submission. They're working out some of the kinks and the bugs. Do I see that proceeding in 2023? I don't. It's entirely possible, depending on approvals, that this could proceed in 2024.
The reason for that question is one of the options we could do is defer this project until budget 2024, but I just want to make sure that we have a plan and strategy in place to deal with the relocation of the dog park so that we can let the community know that we have a location as an option. So I'm hesitant to do that if we think it's going to move forward too quickly into 2024, where we're going to have to close the dog park and not have another solution in place. And that would be my one hesitancy to not moving forward with this recommendation at this point. That would be my one hesitancy. I mean, we can always defer it to the budget time, but that would be my concern. Councillor Sherwood?
Yes, Your Worship. So again, I'm going back to my original comment where I want it to come to 2024 budget. But my also concern is that when I see the word temporary and using $25,000 for something temporary just isn't sitting well with me. That's all. I'm just thinking, could we, if this fails, I will be putting forward a motion that two things, that we refer this back to staff to see if we can find a spot that would be a permanent solution. And then I would be open to the $25,000, knowing that we're not going to, spend $25,000 to disassemble it and throw our money away.
There's no motion on the floor yet, so you can put that on the floor if you'd like to.
But okay.
There's no motion on the floor currently. I didn't
Okay.
start one. So if you want to defer it until, refer it back to staff.
I would like
for that.
to refer it back to staff if I could. I'll put a motion. I don't know if any of my other councillors are going to support me on this, but I will put forward a motion to come back to 2024. And if they could refer back to see if there's any land availability to make it a permanent location.
Before I ask for a seconder, Ms. Savage, do you have any comment about that? Because I know you did look at locations. So just wanted to see if that would be feasible.
Through you, Mayor Post, we could look at the hydro lands. We could come up with some costing. The train station lands are also on the list for a permanent location. I know that there are other interests in this space, so it's premature to say until we evaluate all of the requests for that. But by the time we secure land or feasibility studies for land for a permanent dog park, the dog park currently will probably close. So there may be a gap in service for a dog park. That's the risk. But other than that, we can come back with permanent locations and costing that come along with that.
My additional comment to that would be that we have tasked staff to come back with a land plan and a showcase of all the lands that we do have and potential opportunities that we have for those lands. So that would probably be considered as part of that. But I do think that in the meantime, we have to have a plan in place. And my understanding is that the 25,000 isn't going to be spent until we deem it necessary to use it. So in the meantime, if we can earmark the money, know that we have at least a temporary solution, we can still move forward in 2024 to try and find a more permanent, and maybe the temporary location won't be needed if we can acquire land and develop a park before then. We wouldn't have to do a temporary location, but then at least if we do need to move to a temporary, the motion here would allow us to do that, would be my comment. But I will look for, if you're still interested in leaving your motion on the floor, I would look for a seconder if somebody's interested in seconding Councillor Sherwood's motion. I'll second it to get it on the floor. Any additional questions or comments for Councillor Sherwood? Do you have any more comments you want to make on your motion? Okay, then I'll call the vote on your motion. All in favor? Okay, Councillor Sherwood in favor and everybody else voted opposed? All opposed? Okay. So we do need to get a second motion on the floor. Did somebody want to move the motion? Councillor McIntosh? So I'll read it again. That report CMS 2023-20-22 temporary relocation of off-leash dog park be received, and that council approve the temporary relocation of the off-leash dog park from Hanson Boulevard to 49 Town Line, Orangeville, and that council approve an additional 25,000 from Parks and Recreation Reserve for the temporary relocation of the off-leash dog park. And further, that staff be directed to return to council for direction if it is determined through the environmental study that remediation of the proposed new site would be required. I can also add in that, if you don't mind me adding to it, and that the land acquisition strategy come back with a idea of a permanent dog park in mind. If we can capture that in there as well, Ms. Khan, are you okay with that, Councillor McIntosh? And seconded by Deputy Mayor. Any additional questions or comments? I will call the vote on that one. All in favor? And all opposed. Councillor Sherwood opposed. Okay, thank you, everybody. 12.3 is the lease extension. I said leash because we've been talking about off-leash dog parks. The lease extension for Orangeville Jean Hamlin YMCA Child Care Center, CMS 2023-24. The recommendation is that report CMS 2023-24 lease extension, Orangeville Jean Hamlin YMCA Child Care Center be received, and that council directs staff to exercise the optional 2-year extension as set out in paragraph 2.03 of the lease agreement, and that council directs staff to provide the YMCA of Greater Toronto a further option of a 2-year term which shall be exercised not less than 180 days prior to July 31st, 2025, and that council approve the lease amending agreement between the town of Orangeville and the YMCA of Greater Toronto, and that council pass a bylaw to enter into an amending agreement and to authorize that mayor and clerk to sign the necessary amending agreement. Can I have a motion, please? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Prendergast. Questions or comments on this one? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried unanimously. 12.4 is the Sensitive Receptor Program update. The recommendation is that report CMS 2023-19 Sensitive Receptor Program update be received. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor McIntosh, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Any questions or comments? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report here, no doubt, has a lot of people, not to say on edge, but it's one that we've discussed about some of the concerns. I read this with intrigue and tried to put myself in the same shoes that some people might find themselves in. I don't suffer from being sensitive, but I was thinking about it from a wind perspective. And I really like the way this particular report was framed because it does provide some changes in how someone goes about to garner an approval. But has there been some consideration for patterns of the wind? And I know that this is maybe not part of the thought of the report, but again, I'm wondering if someone from staff would be able to provide their thoughts on this.
Ms. Savage, you want to take that one? Oh, or Councillor McIntosh wants to take it. Is that all right?
When I originally wrote the bylaw, there was something in there about wind. I don't know if it's changed, but there was a stipulation about windy days. You were not allowed.
That's really where I was coming from, Councillor McIntosh.
Ms. Savage?
There has been no change, through you, Mayor Post, there's been no change to that clause in the bylaw or that term in the bylaw.
Deputy Mayor?
The only thing I was going to say to that comment was the reality is if there's a complaint from a neighbor and the fire department comes, the fire goes out. So if it's windy and it's bothering people, it'll go out. That's how it'll go. I just wanted to compliment staff on this. We brought this forward originally. It was time to review it, make sure it was doing all the right things. My contention was it wasn't doing the right things. I think the idea of the medical support is important. I know some people won't like that, but it's still private. You won't have to declare that to anybody else other than to staff, and then that information will be private again, and you won't be breached in that way. And the other piece that I think is really important is the definition of the yard and the way that we can determine now where that pit goes. It just allows people who enjoy their backyards to have more freedom. And that's what I was after, while being respectful of people who have sensitive receptor issues. So thank you to staff. I think this does exactly what we wanted it to do, and I'm prepared to vote in favor of it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Prendergast?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I agree with this report, and I think by having the medical note, without divulging any personal medical history or information, we will deter erroneous claims for sensitive receptors. I did have a question. If someone is already a registered sensitive receptor, will they be grandfathered in with this new process, or will they have to reapply?
Ms. Savage?
Through you, Mayor Post, the permit holders, the sensitive receptors, they have to apply every year. So those that are sensitive receptor this year remain a sensitive receptor, and then next year they would reapply and we would assess it then, or anyone moving forward from this day forward if it's approved.
Is there any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. 12.5 is the relocation of the firefighter memorial. The recommendation is that report CMS 2023-27, firefighter memorial relocation to Orangeville, be received. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Sherwood and Councillor Stevens, any questions or comments? Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you, Your Worship. I must admit, I was very, very surprised to see this report come to council. 3 years ago, I was approached by the Ontario Firefighters Association. Excuse me. I was actually the point of contact on this. I did get in touch with the families of Dan Little, who, by the way, was one of the most dedicated volunteer firefighters that we ever had. He lived and breathed volunteer firefighting, and it was a great honor to see him succeed in getting the memorial at the time. And him alone he worked on it. That's why we only see his name mentioned in the report. So his son, Rob Little, is who I talked to. And it was agreed at the time that this would go where the new fire hall is being installed. So I guess my first question, has there been any contact with the family? Because again, I've been shoved aside, which is fine, I don't mind. Second of all, the location that's proposed, I don't mind it. It's certainly more visible, and there is walking access to it. So I don't have anything against the actual site that's proposed, but I would really like confirmation from the Little family that this is where they would like it. Thank you.
Ms. Savage?
Through you, Mayor Post. Yes, so we have the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office has been in contact with the Little family. I know that extensive consultation has happened throughout the process from when it switched from the new fire hall location over to this location. So we did assess whether or not it would fit at the new fire hall. We worked with our architect. We determined a location that would be out of the way for construction, because we do need to relocate it by the end of the year. And yet construction on the fire hall is going to take a couple of years. So to be out of the way, but with the grading and with the slope and with the access to the road, we had determined that the new proposed location was much better for those reasons: visibility, high traffic area, You could still host events around it. And again, when the monument will be relocated, we are also committing to having an annual event to honor the memorial and those that the memorial is honoring. So we felt that this was a better location. Infrastructure Ontario has also been in the conversation. Is they're going to pay for the relocation of it. So we feel that everybody's been consulted, and we have been doing electronic communication, and everybody seems supportive.
Councillor Andrews.
Thank
and then
you.
Councillor Sherwood.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor McIntosh, thank you for your efforts in this too. It's a brilliant idea, and Ms. Savage, thank you for the report. And I'm glad to see that through the Solicitor General's office as well as Infrastructure Ontario, they're covering the costs. Was there any consideration to Councillor McIntosh's point, and not to crowd the real estate that we have behind the Alder Street facility? We already have a couple of other very important facades that are there, Bravery Park as well as the Healing Garden. I'm not sure if there was enough real estate to consider this or a standalone location. I do like the location under your proposal, but I'm just thinking for the sake of a location that already exists, maybe there was not enough real estate. And I think the visibility, for the respect of those that are going to be recognized under this repatriation of this memorial, maybe having something where it is proposed to locate, be relocated makes absolute sense too as well. But my question is just any consideration on that other site that we have.
Ms. Savage.
You, Mayor Post. Staff who are working on the relocation plan mentioned Bravery Park a few times. I think there was a site visit, but it was determined at this point there wouldn't be the space that this monument warrants. It is 49,000 pounds. It is a large, predominant, memorial, and we thought that having its own dedicated space, it wouldn't get lost in any other memorials. Plus, we have plans to look at Alder through our facility needs assessment. So again, that may be under construction in the next couple of years, which would subject all of those other amenities, the outdoor amenities, to that construction site as well.
Well, I respect the decision and the recommendation on the location. Thank you.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, through you. I don't know if I really loved where this was planned. I was trying to visualize it along the lines of what Councillor Andrew was saying. My first thought was Bravery Park, but in actual thought, was consideration ever made to put it in Dragonfly underneath that beautiful Canadian flag, which would be such a nice way of dedicating it. You have people that are traveling along Highway 10. You have that significance of that beautiful Canadian flag. A monument like that, would that not look like really like an ideal place for that?
Ms. Savage.
Through you, Mayor Post. I'm not sure if it was considered, and I'm not as familiar with the park. So is there, and staff can take it back and we can relook at it. We can work with the Little family and with the Fire Marshal's office to see if that is maybe a more appropriate location. Just is there parking? Is it accessible? Are we able to move high levels of traffic in and out? Because I know that when staff were looking at options, these were the things they were considering. So maybe it wasn't considered because it is not a viable option to host events.
Councillor Sherwood.
And just to follow up, like, I visualize that as being a beautiful spot for this. I really do. Like I say, with the Canadian flag and the fact that you've got that access of Highway 9 and 10. But again, you're right. Do we have enough land there? I'm not sure, but there is parking, and people as they're walking, I think it would be a very surreal thing too, as they're going through those trails, to stop and really reflect on what these men and women have done for us. So that's something I was just hoping that maybe it was considered.
Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Mayor Post, through you. I see here that it says that it is accessible, but I would venture to suggest it is not. It seems like it would be quite a distance for someone who might use a walker or a wheelchair to get to the location of this path. I've walked there through Fenley Park and the paths behind, but street parking is difficult to find, one-sided and all. We might have difficulty with flowing large groups of people through this area. There's not really parking readily available at this site. Thank you.
Ms. Savage, do you want to make comment on that one?
Through you, Mayor Post, noted, we can revisit it with staff. We can reconsider the Dragonfly Park. We can assess, how will those with mobility issues be able to freely go to and from the new proposed location and report back.
Thank you. Councillor McIntosh? Oh, Ms. Innes?
Sorry, I just want to add that because of the weight of the memorial, there's certain locations that are not going to, I don't think Dragonfly Park, you're going to be able to get that size and that weight of a monument into, because of the lands and the sensitivities around them. I think that you're going to have difficulty. So that was part of the process that Infrastructure Ontario went through in determining the locations, was how they could actually get the monument into the location safely.
Councillor McIntosh?
Thank you, Worship. One last thing. I do think this is the best location. I think it would get lost in Dragonfly Park. It would also get lost in the Bravery Park. It's too big for that park. It's too big for Dragonfly Park. I don't think you'd ever get it over that little bridge. It's just too heavy. I would hate to see this delayed further. This is, like I say, it's been 3 years, maybe longer in the works. I would hate to see them change their mind and give it to somebody else. I would like to see this passed tonight without any further delay, I guess is the way of putting it. Thank you.
Okay. I see that Acting Chief Richardson has joined us. Do you have any comment you wanted to make on this item at all? We're talking about the firefighter monument. Okay, no worries. We'll let you hang out there then. I thought maybe you snuck in because you heard something that piqued your interest. Okay, so any other further questions or comments? My comments were going to be similar to those of Councillor Prendergast regarding parking. I was a bit worried about where we would do parking, specifically an accessible parking, to make sure that we do have space that is accessible. And I don't know if there was parking considerations in that actual area where people will be able to park. Maybe if we can even add a couple of accessible parking spots within that area, even if it's not a full parking lot, that might be able to assist with that. I'm not sure. Those would just be my last comments. Councillor Sherwood?
Yes, Your Worship. Is there a sense of urgency by the is it the fire marshals that are asking for this to be removed? Is there a bit of an urgency? I kind of suspected that that's why this is coming forward.
Through you, Mayor Post. Yes, definitely by the end of the year. If not, they're aiming for the fall. This conversation's been going on for a while and they're eager to relocate.
So this is where, as you've mentioned, if we don't act on this sooner, we may miss out on this, and that's very not fair to the Little family, because we want that in our community. And Acting Chief, now that you've come to the party late, did you hear my question as to whether Dragonfly Park was ever considered? I did ask Ms. Savage, but I just hope you don't mind, Ms. Savage, that I've asked the Deputy Acting Chief if those discussions are ever made with.
Acting Chief Richardson, welcome. We'll put you on the spot, because why not?
Your Worship, to Councillor Sherwood. They actually looked at various spots throughout the town. They looked at putting it in the new fire station. And it was kind of looked at that if you went to the site on Riddell, it's kind of a coming into the town, a lot of other things that we talked about, parking and stuff too. So there was a consideration for parking. So you have the on-street parking, which is short hop into the park. Plus you have the two bigger parking lots at Fennelly and that. But back to your original question. Yeah, we looked at a couple different spots with them. And it was really felt that that might be the better spot for it. Again, you have a size, the size of it's very large. It's very heavy. So we didn't want it to get lost somewhere, but we didn't want it to overpower another site somewhere either.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being willing to be put on the spot for us.
All good.
Was there any other last comments or questions? Then I will call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. We'll move into 12.6. The recommendation is that report CPS 2023-37 called Council Tasks be received. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Andrews and Councillor Prendergast, any questions or comments on this report? All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. 12.7 is the Saputo Overstrength Agreement. The recommendation is that report INS 2023-29, Saputo Overstrength Agreement, be received, and that the town enter into a revised overstrength agreement to offset additional operating costs at the water pollution control plant, and that council pass a bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the overstrength agreement attached report INS 2023-29 between Saputo Inc., formerly Woolwich Dairy, and the town of Orangeville. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Sherwood and Councillor McIntosh, questions or comments on this one? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. 12.8 is a bus stop agreement. The recommendation is that report INS 2023-34 bus stop agreement be received, and that council consider and approve the attached bus stop agreement with Grey County, and that council pass a bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the bus stop agreement proposed by the town of Orangeville to Grey County and attached to report INS 2023-34. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Sherwood and Councillor Stevens. Questions first from Councillor Sherwood, then Councillor Andrews.
Yes, Your Worship, I will be supporting this. However, one of the things that I've noticed that's evidently missing here is our transit hub. Why would that not be a primary stop? I don't know, like our hub.
Mr. DeLeese, I'll turn it to you.
Through you, Mayor Post, to Councillor Sherwood, great question. Currently, the needs of Grey County have identified the spots that we have, or the stops or the transfers points that we've identified in the report. As I may have mentioned to other councillors, if indeed that need changes when our hub changes, we will certainly make Grey County aware of that, and we may come back to you with another report saying that this has been added. Of course, with that comes more obligation on their part to pay us to clear snow and to maintain it. So certainly it's a great question, but currently their program needs did not identify that.
So,
Councillor Sherwood, go ahead.
yeah, so Your Worship, they were told about this hub, this location, right?
My understand.
For that.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. My understanding is through you, Your Worship, that they were told about this. I've kind of come in partway through this process, but my understanding is that, yes, they were told about this. And we'll certainly make them aware that the new transfer station is opening September, October of this year.
I guess if they eliminated the one on Centennial Road in front of Georgian College, they could eliminate that and go to the hub, which is just a short distance. But I guess what they're doing is they're gearing to the students that are attending Georgian College is why they probably want to stop there, right?
Mr. DeLeese.
Again, I can't speak through you, Your Worship. I can't speak to Grey County's needs. Certainly, that is certainly one of the options. And when they revisit and when we revisit our routes, they may want to revisit their programs and where the best place to stop is. And certainly that may play into where we put those stops as well too.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews and then Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did pose that question to Mr. Luce directly, and again, thank you for posing the question, Councillor Sherwood. I think this is just good news, additional options for those that are coming to our community. And regardless of where the stops are, I think it's important that we have fixture points, and be that even with the new transit hub, which makes absolute sense. And I know that anecdotally that I think the location of Georgian makes sense because a large number of their students that are attending that campus are in fact coming from out of the community, and it has been somewhat difficult for them to come. So this, provides additional transportation support for them. Thank you.
Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I'm just looking at the three locations, and at 4th Street, there is a bus shelter, right? And at the mall, there's a bus shelter. Is there currently a bus shelter in front of Georgian College?
Mr. DeLeese.
Through you, Your Worship, there is not.
Might this be something that we could include in our contract in addition to winter maintenance? Perhaps the addition of a bus shelter might be something that Grey County could offer us.
Mr. DeLeese.
Through your worship, my understanding is that they have a limited budget, as do we. And certainly it's one of those situations where they have asked to piggyback onto our program as cost effectively as possible. If we were to pose that to them, my fear would be that they would probably eliminate that stop. But certainly I could pose that to them and come back to you with an answer. Absolutely.
Thank you. Is there any additional questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Item 12.9 is community group pavement markings update. The recommendation is that report INS 2023-43 community group pavement markings update be received, and that council adopt a new location for pavement markings for designated community groups, and that council consider approving additional funding for pavement markings in 2024's operating budget for the service level change, and that any additional pavement markings requested by community groups be required to make a presentation to council, and if the new request is approved, require that the budget be amended to include the new request and service level change. Before I call for a mover and a seconder, I think we need to have some discussion about what those new locations would be. So I've got some hands up already. We'll start with Councillor McIntosh, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and then Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Your Worship. Anybody that knows me knows I support the Indigenous and the LGBT community wholeheartedly. I just think this is a lot of money to spend on this. I just wonder if it could be spent better. I know I've talked to Tim. I've talked to the mayor of Shalban, actually. They spent a total of $1,000 on their rainbow crossing. I know it won't last, as Tim explained to me, but the one we had didn't seem to last either. So I just don't know if this is money well spent, to be honest. I don't know if somebody privately wants to take this on, or I just don't think $30,000 annually to keep these updated is a good use of taxpayers' money. Again, it's not a need, it's a nice to have. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Councillor McIntosh and I are completely aligned. I think if you think back to the time when we approved this, there was first of all, one of the crosswalks, there was a massive catastrophe that was realized in our country. It was one of the worst Canada Days I think we've all celebrated. And so we made the decision to celebrate a group of people that were, marginalized for, I'm not using proper language, but we did that. And then we did the same thing because we wanted to support another group. And then after that, there was a loose request to have poppies on the road. And I thought all those things were great. And then I realized we've got a problem here and we're down a road that we shouldn't do. And then candidly, these great benevolent pieces of art didn't stay together and the criticism from the town was significant. So my suggestion is that we move away from this and move on and do something else with our tax dollars, especially given the situation that we're finding ourselves in. So that's where my head's at.
Councillor Andrews. Oh, Councillor Andrews, then Councillor Sherwood.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I'm in alignment with my fellow members of council. I'm a huge supporter of the groups identified, as well as many other groups that have come forth wanting to make sure that their voices are heard in our community. These two crosswalks, three crosswalks, were installed at a time where I guess the intent was to acknowledge visually. And at the time, we ended up getting national recognition for it too. But the cost to continue to refurbish what seems to be, unfortunately, an inferior way of applying a visual marker, as much as the suggestion in the reports, Mr. Koselleck, I really appreciate you and your team for providing the detail because it does provide us with some options, relocation, other part of our community, but it's going to be a continuous expense. And I'm wondering if there might be an opportunity for us to think about some other way of acknowledging the groups that have stepped forward, and we've done so, but it also becomes an eyesore when they're not kept up to the way they were originally installed. And that is a frustration that I have, is this expense is just going to be a continuum. Unless we can laser etch them, or what some communities do is they allow an artisan to paint it with chalk and it washes away, but it acknowledges that particular time in the calendar when we need to be vocal, we need to support, we need to end up acknowledging. So that might be a more prudent way of doing so without having something that's permanent and then requires annual maintenance. Thank you.
Councillor Sherwood.
Oh, yes, Your Worship. I'm finding it's very cost prohibitive. I liked it when it first came. I think we've done our due diligence in acknowledging it, but we know that we live in a climate that doesn't, we just can't support these kind of things. So I'm thinking because it's it's going to be a continual expense to keep up with this. Putting them on the roadways, I know is all your part of your option here. And I'm not going to support it because I don't think we need to put it on roadways anywhere. Has there ever been any thought of perhaps putting it on a side of a building? Put a rainbow on a side of a building. You've got Theatre Orangeville has a beautiful mural on the side of their building. So does the ice cream shop. Can we not do that, display a rainbow on a building and acknowledge the Indigenous, and those certainly would hold up to it. And I don't think you'd be coming to us for $20,000 a year for money. I just can't support them going on roadways anymore.
Mr. Delis or Mr. Koslak, do one of you want to take that question?
Certainly, Your Worship. Appreciate the opportunity, and through you to Councillor Sherwood. We had discussed a number of other alternatives with economic development, and certainly with my colleague in that department. And certainly one of the options was, of course, a banner on Broadway in the locations on the streetlights. They were opposed to that because they just felt that there are some historic banners that are hung, such as Remembrance Day, and they didn't want that to get lost. Certainly, we can take back any recommendation that comes out of this meeting today, explore it with economic development or even the private community, depending on council's wishes, and we'd be happy to bring something back. Again, we made the recommendation that we did to be respectful of those communities that we had supported in the past, so we didn't want to make any decision without council's approval.
Before I make comment, was there additional questions or comments from anybody on council? Councillor Prendergast, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I too echo the sentiments of my fellow colleagues here, and I wholeheartedly support the Indigenous groups and the LGB. Sorry, I got tripped up in my words. Both groups, and I also am hesitant to spend this large sum of money that would require an annual commitment of $20,000 to $30,000, in addition to the removal of the current crosswalks. That would be $3,000 to $5,000. I agree with Councillor Sherwood. Perhaps a vertical display. That might be prone to more vandalism because it's now vertical. Just a comment about the pennants that could hang from the light standards. There were Orangeville Northman pennants hanging from the light standards, and those aren't exactly historical. So I think that we could maybe explore that at certain times. In addition, perhaps certain archways in parks, or maybe there are other things that perhaps we could do as a town to celebrate these two groups.
Yeah, I agree. I'm frustrated, I guess, that when we initially installed these, we were sold a different bill of goods than what we received. And we were really told that these would last a significant length of time and that they wouldn't require $30,000 a year to upkeep. So as someone who supported these right from the beginning, it's disappointing that we have to move this way, but I agree with everything that my council colleagues have said. I think at this point, they're an eyesore the way that they are, and they need to be removed until we can find a different solution. One of the things that I was thinking might be an option, and perhaps the team can look into it to see if it's been done anywhere else, is looking for opportunities on sidewalks where perhaps one of the stones on Broadway could be painted in a way that would reflect it. I think there's some other options we could look into and be creative. We've got a very artistic community. I hope that we can find other ways to acknowledge, but in the meantime, I'm in agreement with everything that's been said here so far today. So with that, I'm going to try and redo a recommendation here that report INS 2023-43 community group pavement markings update be received, and that council, hold on please, and that council move to option 2, which is remove the crossings and do not reapply any pavement markings at a one-time cost of $3,000 to $5,000 to remove the existing. And that maybe we add that council direct staff to look for additional opportunities that could recognize the groups that we've discussed, the LGBTQ+ community as well as the Indigenous community, and that any additional pavement markings requested by community groups be denied, as we know that they are no longer a feasible option in our community. Does that cover it off pretty well? Ms. Khan, does that work? All right. Can I have a motion to that effect, please? Councillor Stevens and Councillor McIntosh, any final questions or comments? All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. 1210 is a budget revision for annual funding for repairs to the clock tower. The recommendation is that report INS 2023-44, budget revision for additional funding for repairs to clock tower be received, and that council approve a revision to the approved 2023 budget to add an additional $50,000 for the repair of the existing clock tower located within the Broadway median between First Street and Second Streets, and that the additional funds be taken from the general reserves, and that council directs staff to procure the services for the repair through sole source through Verdon Company of Woodstock, Ontario. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Andrews, seconded by Deputy Mayor. I'll start with Deputy Mayor Taylor for comments, and then Councillor McIntosh and Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. I think it's essential that this be telling the right time. It's an embarrassment when you go downtown and it's not working, and the clock is too beautiful not to have it in working condition. Just sidebar for a quick second. This clock tower, if anybody knows the history, it sat in the basement of this building for years, and the only reason it got up there was because former Deputy Mayor Jim McGregor took it upon himself to spend the time to reconstruct and put it there. And Mr. McGregor still goes down there and his grandkids say, "Hey, Grandpa, there's your clock." They have no idea he was ever on council or what he did, but there's his clock. Anyway, it's a great story. It's something that we should keep. I know people, again, are worried about funding, but this thing needs to be looked after, and we don't need it telling the right time twice a day. We need it telling the right time all the time. So let's fix it and move on. So I'll be voting in favor of this.
I think it's actually 8 times a day because every clock has a different time. Yep. Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you, Worship. I'm in agreement with the Deputy Mayor. To me, it's kind of like the swimming pool. We either take it down or fix it. It's just no good leaving it where it is. So I will support this. Thank you.
Councillor Sherwood, and then Councillor Andrews.
Yes, Your Worship. I too love this clock. It has a lot of historical significance. However, here we are dipping into reserves again. I would like to have seen this added as a budgetary item, but I know that my answer back would be that it's going to be budgeted out of reserves anyway, right? That's likely going to be the answer. So unfortunately, I'm going to vote against it because I'm not comfortable with it coming out of reserves at this time.
Mr. Koslek?
Through Your Worship, one of the reasons we came forward now and not wait till the 2024 budget, if we put the order in now, we'll be able to get it installed before the snow flies. So that way the work can be done this year and it'll all be corrected this year.
Thank you, Mr. Koslek. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. You have to be able to tell the time at any time of the year. I really appreciate the report, and the visuals really help because I'll be standing as close as I can and I'm trying to look up and I can't figure out how this thing was constructed, but it is absolutely a brilliant focal point, and the visuals do put into perspective the complexity and then how necessary it is to upgrade this fixture in our community. My other comment is that this is also another one of those fixtures in our community that people talk about. And to the Deputy Mayor's point is that if it's not telling the right time, people end up questioning, okay, what's going on here? So it's a real important calling card for those that are in town and those that are coming through our town for whatever amount of time they're going to be spending.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, I will call the vote. All in favor? And any opposed? So Councillor Sherwood is opposed. Item 1211, Road Network Survey. The recommendation is that report INS 2023-45, Road Network Survey Budget Amendment be received, and that council approve the creation of a new capital project for the consulting services required to collect pavement data and analysis for all of the town's arterial, collector, and local roads, and that council approve the allocation of funding in the amount of $55,000 from the General Capital Reserve to the new capital project for the engineering services required to collect pavement data analysis for all of the town's arterial, collector, and local roads. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Andrews and Deputy Mayor. Any questions or comments? Councillor Sherwood.
I'm going to go back and use that R word again. And I'm going to vote in favor of this one because, hold your seat here. I just want to explain that, I look at reserves as what is a reserve meant for? And this is exactly what it's meant for. It's very, very important that we capitalize on the road conditions and everything. So to surprise you all, I'm going to be supporting this one.
Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Curry has educated us all on why this needs to be done, and I really like the thinking. I like the education you've given us, and that is the planning model of what's coming up and what are those expenses. And, you know, as someone who doesn't like to spend money either, you know, I feel better when I know that there's a plan in place. So I thank you, sir, for bringing this forward and the way you've educated us on the process and what needs to be done. So I will definitely be voting in favor of this. And if I could just be a negative Nelly on another side, like the whole piece about the reserves, I don't have any at this point, right? So we've drawn on a large part of what we've done. So I don't know. It's we're in a pickle for sure. But to keep talking about our lack of reserves at this point, I mean, we just need to get these things done, and we're going to have to figure that out at another time. So it's unfortunate.
Mr. Curry, do you want to make any comments about the report that you've got for the benefit of the public of what we're doing?
Through you, Madam Mayor. To your point, Councillor Sherwood, it's very important for a municipality to know its assets. It's one thing to know how many streets we have, but we need to know the conditions of the streets. We have a consultant, working with a consultant right now that once this is approved, we will be entering into a contract probably within the next few weeks. So this study will be done hopefully by the end of summer. And with any luck, I'll be coming back to council in September before budget to let you know the status of our roads and what it's going to take to maintain our road system. Currently, we don't have a dedicated road resurfacing program in Orangeville. It's desperately needed. Currently, right now, the roads are at a state where we either resurface a lot or we let them fall apart and we reconstruct them at twice the cost. So this report will actually give us a guiding light on which streets need to be resurfaced and when. And it is a significant part of the asset management of the town.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. Well said. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, through you, Worship. Mr. Curry, how long will this report last? Like 3 years? Are you gonna come back next year and ask for the same report?
Mr. Curry.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Stevens. The road needs study should be done every 3 years. Currently, the one we have is done every 5 years. The climate we live in, our roads could be fantastic 1 year and go through a massive freeze-thaw cycle many times, and the roads can be devastated by that. So will I be coming back next year asking you for more money? No, this is going to be budgeted every 3 years in the capital budget going forward.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Okay, I will call the vote. All in favor? And that one's carried unanimously. Item 1212 is about stormwater management ponds. The recommendation is that report INS 2023-46, stormwater management ponds budget amendment, reallocation of project funds be received, and that council approve the creation of a new capital project for the engineering services required to perform a holistic condition survey of all of the town's stormwater management ponds, and that council approve the creation of a new capital project for the engineering and project management services required for the detailed design and approvals for stormwater pond retrofitting, and that council approve the reallocation of funding in the amount of $300,000 from the approved 2023 budget from capital project 26029-0000 to the new capital project for the engineering services required to perform a holistic condition survey of all of the town's stormwater management ponds, and that council approve the reallocation of funding in the amount of $880,531 from the approved 2023 budget from capital project 26029-0000 to the new capital project for the engineering and project management services required for the detailed design and approvals for stormwater pond retrofitting. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor McIntosh. Questions or comments on this item? Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. I was just going to ask, I see it's a reallocation, but what will this do to the original capital project for the Milady Pond? Like, if we're putting this on the back burner, is that going to cause any type of critical concerns?
Mr. Curry?
Madam Mayor, through you once again, proper asset management practices. We've not done a study on our stormwater management ponds since the 80s. So we don't know if there's a pond out there that's worse than Malati. Until we actually go out and do a survey of all of our ponds so that we can come up with a plan to repair them, we don't know. So to answer your question, I can't right now. Once the study is done, then we can come back with an informed decision on which ponds need to be taken care of first.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Sherwood?
That sounds like a great plan.
Perfect. Any additional questions or comments? No, seeing none. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Curry. Item 13 is correspondence. The recommendation is that the following correspondence be received. 13.1 is from the Township of Amaranth regarding school bus stop arm cameras. 13.2 is the Township of Melanchthon regarding school bus stop arm cameras. And 13.3 is the Town of Shelburne regarding fire prevention and protection services. Can I have a motion to receive all three items of correspondence? Councillor Andrews and Councillor Prendergast. Questions or comments? Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you again, Your Worship. I guess this is to yourself and the Deputy Mayor. At one point, the county had a presentation 3-4 years ago in regards to these stop arms on the school buses. And the deal at the time was the company would install them at no charge, but they would get a certain % of the profits. So I just wondered if you had any comment. Thank you.
I'm actually going to refer that one over to Ms. Innes. We've recently received some information from another municipality who had looked into it. So Ms. Innes, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. So the Region of Peel had underwent investigating having the stop arm cameras. It was directed by council to review and to potentially bring back a pilot program under the conditions that it met all provincial requirements and that there was no cost to the taxpayers. Those conditions could not be met and an agreement was never had. So the Region of Peel recently shelved that program and that the option for that pilot because they couldn't come to that agreement. I've done some investigation to see other municipalities if they've used the stop arm. The one municipality that I was able to find was the City of Ottawa. And I'm happy to go back and research that further should council wish. But at this point in time, there isn't very many municipalities that have used this technology. I think that the request from both Amaranth and Melanchthon is good. They're asking the province to step up and make this a provincial responsibility in ensuring school bus safety, and it is an issue in our rural communities. So I'm happy to go back and investigate how it worked in the City of Ottawa. I'm suspecting that there was probably a cost that was borne to the municipality, but I can circle back and let you all know that as well. But I think that there's no harm in actually supporting the request made by Amaranth and Melanchthon to ask the province to make this installation on the school buses.
Did you want to add that as a motion as well? Okay. Can we add that as a secondary motion onto the motion to receive? Can we have a seconder for that addition? Councillor Andrews. Was there any other questions or comments on any of the items of correspondence? Okay, so we'll vote on the amendment first. All in favor of Councillor McIntosh's motion? And that's carried unanimously. And then we'll vote on the main motion to receive. All in favor? And that's also carried unanimously. Item 14 is committee and board minutes. The recommendation is that the minutes of the following meetings be received. 14.1 is the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council minutes from April 12th. And the second is the Committee of Adjustment minutes from May the 3rd. Can I have a motion to receive, please? Councillor McIntosh and Councillor Prendergast. Questions or comments? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make a comment. I'm so happy that the Mayor's Youth Advisory is back. And it is so nice to see that things are happening. And I know that you had a meeting on June the 7th, but just to cultivate our youth in our community and have them come together to discuss things that are going on, just kudos to you for bringing it back.
Thank you. And just to add on that, I just want to give a bit of a shout out to the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council because they are an absolutely amazing group of engaged youth. They have lots of ideas on how we can better represent the youth through our decision making, but also through some of our communications. I also stepped aside and told them at our first meeting that I didn't want to chair or vice chair anything on this, that this was a youth committee. So two of the members, Aislinn and Jack, both stepped up to be chair and vice chair, neither of which had done it before. So that's a really great learning opportunity. And they are just a wonderful, great group of youth. So shout out to all of them, because I know some of them are probably watching tonight because they actually watch all of our council meetings, which is very cool. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. To you, Your Worship. As those kids, young adults, go off to school, are you going to replace them or do they stay on?
So that's a great question. We do have one member right now who's going to be leaving for post-secondary in the fall, but he is confident that he'll be able to make all of our meetings. He does have the option to join us via Teams as well. He's staying fairly locally, so he would like to remain a member. We did have that discussion at our first meeting that we understand that there will potentially be a little bit of turnover on this committee, just based on the fact that some are going away to school. And we will, as that comes up, we'll come back to council for further appointments, but we did have a huge turnout of kids, of youth who wanted to participate. So we do have some really great contenders that are sitting in with their resumes waiting to join whenever a position comes open. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious, and I guess to go through you, Mr. Koslak, but the report from the Committee of Adjustment speaking about 40 to 46 Broadway, given the fact that that street, in my mind, is going to change so much over the next number of years, is it wise for us to allow a 21-year lease to a smaller footprint building in that section? It seems like an odd thing to do.
Mr. Koslak?
Through your worship, I didn't attend the meeting, so I'd have to try and follow up with the planning staff to get a little bit more details on that, and I can respond back later to you if you'd like.
Deputy Mayor?
I think we should, like, given, candidly, what I'm saying is there's going to be condo projects going down there. Does that fit with the space and the feel that we want? And I know our planner has got money set aside where he's looking at what our streetscape should look like. My impression of the way that, like my view of that, it seems like it would be very odd. Yeah.
No, I can follow up on that and get back to you on the issues. So.
Okay. Was there any additional questions or comments on that item? Okay, then I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. There was no notice of motion prior to the meeting. Is there any notices of motion here tonight? No, seeing none. I will turn it over to new business. Deputy Mayor, you have your hand up? Or is that a residual hand? Okay. Okay, perfect. Councillor Sherwood and then Councillor Stevens.
Yes, Your Worship. I can tell you our community is buzzing in the month of June, you know, between the blues and jazz and Celebrate Your Awesome, which was another successful event. But I do want to put a little plug in here for a wrap-up show in the end of June with our Theatre Orangeville. The very talented Lisa Way will be bringing in a Happy Days Are Here Again musical from June 27th to 29th. And I'm going to tell you, I would encourage everyone to get tickets because you won't be disappointed. And it'll be just a nice end to community events here in June.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, through your worship. I hate to put staff on the, the chopping block, but I'm going to ask a couple questions. Ms. Savage, Mr. Cosgrove said the walkway over by the Avalon would be finished in June. Just wondering if that's still on schedule.
Ms. Savage?
Through you, Mayor Post. Is this the boardwalk or the asphalt walkway to the east?
Or both.
Okay. Yeah. So the last I had heard about the project was there last week or 2 weeks ago, they had to bring in a vacuum truck. We found additional water. And so that's all been removed. The asphalt's been laid. I believe the boardwalk's done. I drove by it today. There is a rope, so it does need to be opened, but we're in the final stages.
Great, thank you. And then the next one is the transit buses. I've noticed there's been 2 school buses picking up our residents, our community. And I just want to make sure that I'd like an update on those because, I mean, they're hard for the access people to get on.
Mr. Koslak?
Through your worship, we've had a problem with the transit buses. I guess one of them, the rear axle went on it. So we're having that fixed, and that's why they have to use the temporary buses. We're looking at the option, working with finance a little bit too, to see if we do have funds available to purchase a new bus. So we're going to work through that. And also we're trying to focus on the routes that don't have as much accessibility issues. So they'd be the ones with the school buses, and we route the normal buses onto the ones where typically we have a higher ridership of people that require the handicap buses.
If I may. At our Access Orangeville meeting last week, and it was discussed that even in my neighborhood, I live in Montgomery Village, we have two residents that require the bus to come down, and I see the school bus on our route a lot. So if we could speed that process up, I would be grateful. Thank you.
Okay. We understand.
Deputy Mayor, or do you have, is it yours on the same item? Councillor Sherwood? No. Okay, so Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Sherwood.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to bring up Blues and Jazz. I thought it was a fantastic weekend. I had a great time. It was nice to see the town buzzing as it was. The interesting piece, and just for council as information, so the BIA was discussing this somewhat, and I know the restaurateurs in our town are discussing the open road, and given the amount of people down there and how tight we all were, the patios don't seem to work anymore for the restaurants. I would like, and you know, it's suicide for a politician to stand up and say you want more areas for drinking. I don't care. I think that we should be big boys and girls and open up the street and have it as more of an open session thing and allow people to be adults and have their beverage with them as they're walking around. And yeah, it's going to cause controversy. People have different thoughts on it, but the restaurants can't continue the way that they were this year. Liquor license were threatened because they couldn't control the crowds. So I think you're going to either find something changes or there's going to be a different response from the restaurateurs as we move forward. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see what the Blues and Jazz does and what the town's role will be in that. But I think it's going to be an interesting discussion over the next 12 months in terms of what we decide to do and how we decide to support. But it'll be a fascinating discussion.
Councillor Sherwood?
Yes, Your Worship, with all my excitement of all the exciting things in the month of June, I know I've probably missed something, but I just wanted to make a quick mention that this Wednesday, June 21st, is National Indigenous Peoples Day, and there will be events here at Town Hall, an art show with some Indigenous art, and there's going to be events out at Alexander Park from 11 to 4. And I think this would be a great opportunity for us to all celebrate that history and heritage and do some learning. So again, I apologize if I've missed anybody else's special events. It's hard to keep track of everything that's going on in this community.
Absolutely. It is a busy month. I have one item. Myself and Deputy Mayor Taylor received a lovely email from one of the officers with the OPP who wanted to highlight a specific Special Olympian that we have in our community, Ryan McBean. So a couple of weekends ago, Ryan received the Award of Honor from the Law Enforcement Torch Run Special Olympics at the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police in Kingston. As you all may know, Ryan is a very decorated athlete with Special Olympics. You've probably seen him around the community. He also participates in a ton of different fundraising efforts. He's raised over $40,000 for polar plunges and has plunged himself 15 different occasions. He is the very first Special Olympics athlete to receive the Award of Honor, which is the second highest award that the Torch Run gives out. So I think on behalf of council, I just want to congratulate Ryan on his achievements, thank him for everything that he does in our community, and wish him all the best at the upcoming Special Olympics events and other events that he may be entering into. Isn't that awesome? Was there any other items of new business from anybody? Okay, seeing none, we will move into question period. Is there any members of Public Mona online that wish to ask a question? No? Okay, so we will turn it over into the gallery. Is there any members of the public who wish to ask a question? If so, you can head up to the delegation, turn on the mic, state your name and your address, please, and then you can go ahead and continue.
Thank you. Rick Ugolini, taxpayer of Orangeville. My first question is sensitive receptor.
Mr. Ugolini, we do require your address for the minutes.
Don't you know it?
Offhand, no. I know you live on Cedar Drive. That's all I know. But if you can provide the address to the clerk, please.
9.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Sensitive receptor. Is there a chance that I could get a copy of the report so I can go over it before I comment on it?
The report's in the public agenda, so you can access that online. You can pull it up on the Town of Orangeville website. When you go into agendas and minutes, the full reports of everything we discussed today are in there. It's about a 200-page report, and you can flip right to the section that you're looking for, and you can find all the information that town staff provided.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just some things that I've want to comment on. Railway ties still aren't being picked up in town. I noticed that on the busier streets, like Dawson Road, Broadway, they've been picked up. But in the residential areas, they're still sitting there. And this is all over town.
Mr. Koslak, maybe, do you have an update on the rail ties?
Through your worship, actually, it's being coordinated through recreation and culture. So
Perfect. Sorry. Ms. Savage.
Through you, Mayor Post. We have been working with a contractor to remove all the rail ties. It is taking longer than expected. I believe they started last year. They had hoped and promised to be finished by June 15th, but I do believe that they're out and about. So we are putting pressure on that contractor. The arrangement was that, and if I have the details correct, there wasn't a charge. There was no charge to the town to remove them, but this company would then keep the equipment. So there's nothing at this point we can hold them accountable with by withholding payment. We are going to continue to work with them and make sure that they do remove those ties as soon as possible.
Thank you, Ms. Savage.
Also, how long is this temporary dog park going to be going to happen? Like for a year, 2 years, 5 years?
The location that's on Hanson is a temporary dog. No, I'm answering your question. The location that's on Hanson is considered to be a temporary location right now. It was temporary when it was built. How long ago now? 15 years ago, 20 years ago. What's that? I think it was about 15 years. It's been a long time that it's been there. But it was considered to be a temporary location because that was actually already owned by a developer that we knew was going to be developing eventually. So that was never meant to be a permanent home. It will be, my answer would be that it'll be temporary until we find a full-time permanent location for it, which could be the temporary location turns into one if that's what council deems the answer to be. Or it could move to another location in the community if we find a better location. And as Councillor Prendergast said during that discussion, the Parks and Rec Master Plan actually calls for us to have 2 permanent dog park locations, that's a requirement based on the needs of the community. So hopefully we'll be looking for 2 permanent dog park locations. You're welcome.
Also, this question is going to be to Councilman McIntosh, if I may. How big is this monument?
I can turn it over to Councillor McIntosh if you want, or...
Sure, because I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Savage.
Over to Ms. Savage.
It's big.
It's huge.
Through you, Mayor Post. It's 49,000 pounds. There are 3 pillars. There's a slab base that is quite hefty as well. I believe the height, there are varying heights. The 3 pillars are varying heights. I'm going back to the image in my mind, but 9 feet, 10 feet, 11 is 7, lower or higher, 6, 7, and 8. So 6 feet, 7 feet, and 8 feet.
And the full image of it is in the council agenda too. So when you go look at that in that report, there's a full photo of what it looks like and all the dimensions are listed in that.
I was wondering, could this fit in the big monster on Broadway?
In what, sorry?
That centerpiece on Broadway?
No, absolutely not. Well, it's a gathering space though. There's an annual firefighters memorial event that happens annually. So we would like it in a space where people can gather around it and safely gather around it.
Another comment, the stormwater ponds. What is actually in them? Like, is that anything gathered through the storm sewers, like salt and whatever else?
Mr. Koslak, do you want to take that one?
typically it's a lot of sediment that comes through the pipes. You would get a little bit of salt or a little bit of other materials that come off the roads, but most of the buildup is sand and clay.
Just wondering because my dog drinks in the pond, so I just wonder if I should stop it or not.
I think it's probably fine. It's typically any runoff that you have in an urban environment. So it'll be sand and silt. You may get a little bit of salt if it's a spring runoff, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Other question, Dragonfly Park. Who actually owns it, or is it CBC or?
Town of Orangeville owns it. The town of Orangeville owns the park.
Good. You were talking pavement markings. About moving something, like the Canada flag, maybe something shorter, so everybody could see it on the way by.
That could be a consideration, and yeah, something that they can take away. Yep.
That's about it. Oh, one more thing. There are also, what's happening now, there are also smokeless fire pits. And they are a little bit more money, probably a lot more money, but that would alleviate the smoke problem, would it not?
Do you mean the propane ones? Oh, there's something else. I don't know. I have no comment. I have no comment on that at all. Okay, Councillor McIntosh, go ahead.
Don't believe everything you read. I would not call them smokeless. There is smoke. There's less smoke, but there is still smoke. So you still need a permit for one of them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ugolini. Was there any other members of the public who wish to come forward and ask a question? No, I think we're good. Okay, and seeing none, we will move into bylaws. There's a recommendation that the bylaws listed below be read 3 times and finally passed. 19.1 is a bylaw to authorize the entering into and execution of a lease amending agreement with the YMCA of Greater Toronto for the operation of a licensed childcare center located at 65 McCarthy Street. A bylaw to authorize entering into an execution of an overstrength agreement with Saputo Inc. for the purpose of offsetting additional operating costs at the water pollution control plant in the town of Orangeville. A bylaw to authorize the entering into and execution of a bus stop agreement with the Corporation of the County of Grey for the provision of a bus stop in the town of Orangeville. A bylaw to amend bylaw 2023-25, being a bylaw to establish a committee of adjustment for the town of Orangeville. And finally, a bylaw confirming the proceeding of the Council of the Corporation of the town of Orangeville at its closed and regular council meetings held today, June 19th, 2023. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Stevens and Councillor McIntosh, any questions or comments? All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. And a motion to adjourn, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Andrews. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.